Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So a few weeks ago I did a video talking about potholes in a gravel driveway, and I briefly mentioned that I use a pipe edge on my rear blade to clear snow on the gravel driveway to avoid carrying off all the gravel. And I got a couple questions about that in the comments. This is actually a video I wanted to do for a while, but we haven't gotten heavy snow here in Southeast Virginia in a few years. I mean, for a while there, it would be typical for us to get a couple 10 to 15 inch storms every winter. We haven't had that for a while, but we just started a storm here that apparently is going to give us a pretty good amount of snow, and so everything kind of converged, and this is a good time to do this video. In fact, I was just outside trying to finish up some chores before the snow came, and it just started, and it's puking down pretty good out there now. But I got everything done, and we're back in the barn here, so we can talk about this. And of course, the problem is that if you're clearing snow on a gravel driveway, whether you have a front blade or a rear blade, the blades, they're typically set up with some sort of a cutting edge. And if you look here from this camera view, you get a kind of a nice cross section of the blade. Here's the main body of the blade in yellow, and down here in black is the cutting edge. This is reversible. You can replace these when they wear out, but the whole idea is that this is hardened steel. This is going to take the abuse when you're using the blade to scrape gravel, to do grading and other things. Unfortunately, that's not what you want when you're clearing snow. You really want to remove the snow and not your gravel driveway. Over the years, I've tried a bunch of different methods to kind of deal with this issue. The first thing I tried was a rubber cutting edge, and for that I just bought some horse stall mat from a local farm supply store. It's about half-inch thick, very dense, very heavy rubber that they use to put down in stalls to cushion the floor. And you can cut that to the same size as the normal metal edge here. Bolt that onto the blade, and that gives you a nice soft flexible edge for the bottom of your blade, and that worked okay, but I wasn't entirely happy with that. So the other thing I tried was a pipe edge on the bottom of the blade, and when I tried that the first couple of years, what I just did was I took some Schedule 80 PVC pipe, 1.25 inches is really the ideal size to use, and I would very carefully rip a slot in that pipe down the length of the pipe on the table saw. You have to be careful with PVC on a table saw, because if the blade catches, it's just going to blow it into a million pieces. But if you keep your blade really, really low and you feed that pipe in very carefully and keep it straight, you can cut a nice slot in that pipe. And then you can take that PVC pipe with a slot in it, line it up with your cutting edge, and then just kind of slap it on with your hands, and you will have a nice round pipe bottom over your cutting edge to plow with. And so I did that for a few years, and I found that worked great. The only problem is that the PVC would eventually wear out, and I'd have to make a new one. I did that for a couple of years. I just used the pipe until it wore out, made a new one, put it on there. Eventually convinced myself that was the way to go, and so I wanted to do something a little bit more permanent. Now, if you had plasma cutter that could let you put a slot in a metal pipe, that would work great. I don't. So what I did was I found a piece of 1.25 inch galvanized plumbing pipe, and I basically just welded on some ears to it, 2 of them, one here, one down there, and just bolted that through using the existing holes in the blade. And so this is really just sitting underneath this metal cutting edge, and I'll put a close-up video in here so you can see what this looks like. But it's basically blocking this cutting edge from touching the gravel, and instead we get a nice smooth rounded surface that can ride over the gravel, and this is going to minimize digging up that gravel when you're clearing snow. And I think this is especially useful in our area. We're in Southeast Virginia. There are periods of the winter where the ground does freeze, but more often we're going through freeze and thaw cycles, and so the gravel is not always hard and firm, and so you really need something nice and smooth that can skim over that gravel, catch the snow, but not remove the gravel. In other parts of the country, like when I lived in New England, up in Vermont, the ground pretty much stayed frozen all winter long. In fact, once you plowed a couple times on gravel, you'd kind of build up a base of snow. We call that the plow base, over the top of the gravel, and that would get hard. And you would just keep plowing on top of that hard base. You'd throw sand or salt down on top of that hard base, but it was like a protective layer of snow that really kept the driveway in good shape. We don't have that here in Virginia, though. We go through freeze-thaw cycles, and so this has really been critical in helping me to clear snow from a long gravel driveway without damaging the driveway, without carrying all my gravel off, to other places. So I just wanted to cover that in this video since people asked about it, and to me this is one of those simple farmer hacks that's worked exceptionally well for me over the years. Yeah, it's puking down snow out there right now. This is about midday on Wednesday. It's supposed to snow from now all the way through Thursday morning sometime, and the weather models have been kind of moving the heavy snow to the southeast of us, so I'm not sure what we're actually going to get, but last night when I checked, we were in the band where it looked like 10 to 15 inches was pretty realistic. It happens to be really cold now. The water ratio in the snow is going to be about 15 to 1, so this is actually going to be powdery, light, fluffy snow. That means that the snow depths are going to go up. So if that really turns out to be true, I will do more video tomorrow morning when I'm clearing the driveway and let you see how this works in action. One thing I've learned over the years is powdery snow is great to clear. I mean, it's just easy. It gets out of the way of the blade, and I will angle this blade when I'm out there tomorrow so that it's going to windrow the snow off to the shoulder. And with powdery snow, you get just really nice windrowing action with the blade. The snow just moves off of the driveway to the sides. This is a 6-foot blade. My tractor wheels are about 5 feet to the outside, but when I angle this blade, do the math, it covers slightly less area than 6 feet. So this will let me cover the tracks of the tires, and I basically make a pass down the driveway in one direction, turn around, come up the other direction, and I'm done, and that's it. So that's what I like about the powdery snow. When we get heavier wet snow, that doesn't windrow as nicely. A lot of times it'll stick to the blade, and I'll be dragging along a big pack of snow behind the tractor. A lot of times with that heavy wet snow, I have to make multiple passes just to clear things off. But either way, this setup works great. This pipe edge has proven itself to be very useful over the years. So stay tuned. We'll come back tomorrow morning, and I will either be clearing snow or talking about how the snowstorm was a bust. But either way, we'll continue this tomorrow. Okay, so here we are back the next morning. It's Thursday morning. We ended up getting, I want to say, 6 to 7 inches here. It did settle some overnight, and actually the driveway, I think because the ground was warm, there's probably only 4 to 6 inches on the driveway. So that's getting down to the lower end of what I worry about clearing snow on. But I also try and factor in weather. As I mentioned before, we go through freeze-thaw cycles here. And there's a shady section of my driveway that if you don't clear the snow and you start getting traffic over it, it's going to thaw and refreeze, and it gets really icy out there, and it happens to go around a corner where there's a pretty good ravine on one side. So I'm going to go ahead and clear this just to avoid that problem. Not necessarily because of the amount of snow, because like I said, there's probably 4 to 5, maybe 6 inches on the driveway right now, and that's really not too crazy. So I'm pretty much all set up to go. I wanted to point out a few things before we get started. First, I've got the rear blade set up, and I've swept it, and there's a bunch of index holes here where you can drop a pin into the frame to set the blade angle. And I usually sweep this about 30 degrees, and that's a good angle to windrow the snow off to the side. If you go any more extreme than that, it starts to act like a rudder and steer the tractor, and it really doesn't help. And like I said before, I think even with this 6-foot blade swept 30 degrees, it's still more than adequately going to cover the tire tracks of the tractor. And normally I just make 2 passes on the driveway, and this should do it. So I've got this set up and swept. I've also put my hydraulic side link on the 3-point hitch, and I don't use this very often, but when you're clearing snow on a crowned driveway like I have, this helps. I can dial in the blade angle side to side as needed to keep that blade really following the slope of the drive on each side as I clear. I will drop the 3-point hitch all the way down, so it's going to float. Normal 3-point hitches cannot exert hydraulic downforce, but when you drop it all the way down at the float, you get the weight of the implement and the 3-point hitch arms providing downforce just from gravity. And so that's going to keep this in good contact with the driveway. Setting the angle with the hydraulic side link is going to just let me, match the driveway contour as good as possible. So I think with that we're ready to get started. So I'm going to set up this camera out in the driveway so you can see me as I pass by. And then I've got another GoPro up here on my ROPS, which will hopefully get video of the blade itself, and we'll see how it does in terms of windrowing the snow and hopefully not scraping up too much gravel. And again, the ground was fairly soft before this storm, so this is going to be a pretty good test. I'm not going over frozen ground, I'm going over fairly soft ground, and so this is where having the pipe edge really will help avoid scraping up that gravel as we clear the snow. Okay, so I'm out on the driveway after doing a pass in each direction. This is normally where I stop, and from here I'll go up to the entrance of my driveway where we meet the street, turn the blade around and push some snow out of the way backwards to clean up any piles that I brought up to the street. I think this actually worked out better than I had hoped, because you know, in my head I wanted to wait for a snowstorm where we got, you know, 2 feet of snow and I was making big snow banks, which happens periodically out here. But that's the easy case. In this case, this is probably the worst case scenario, because the ground was clearly still kind of warm and still kind of soft, because, you know, off to the sides there's easy 6 inches of snow. On the driveway it had really compacted, and it's even slushy in some spots. And so this to me is the worst case scenario for trying to clear snow on a gravel driveway. We've got soft ground, we've got wet slushy snow, and not a lot of snow. So you have to be very surgical about scraping the snow off when you're doing it like this. Otherwise you'll take all your gravel with you. And so I think this ended up, even though this wasn't the big snowstorm I would have dreamed of for a video, this ended up being a good demonstration of how the pipe edge can be effective. And hopefully, I haven't even looked at the GoPro footage from the back of the tractor yet, but hopefully that'll demonstrate you know, how it was clearing snow but not picking up very much gravel at all. The biggest mess is on the edges of the driveway, where there were accumulations of pine needles. You know, a lot of that would get scraped up into a clump and then deposited off to the side periodically. I'm looking at a couple big ones back there. You can see some over there. But, you know, even if you look at where the pine needles were, you can see that that pipe allowed the blade to scrape off the snow and just kind of skim the pine needles, but not get down into the gravel. I mean, it just really kissed the gravel right there and a little bit right here. I did not scrape the gravel off the crown, which would be bad. Again, I was clearing on each side of the crown intentionally and tweaking the angle of that blade to try and keep it aligned with the crown. So, you know, you can look all the way down the driveway and see that it really did a good job of scraping the snow down as low as possible without taking off too much gravel, or in some cases it didn't take off any gravel in some of these spots. So hopefully this has been useful. And in the case of this driveway, the danger is going to be tonight when this freezes up, and then tomorrow it's going to thaw, and then it's going to freeze up again tomorrow night. If I hadn't scraped the snow off, this section especially gets a lot of shade. This would have turned into solid ice, and we got a curve right over there and a ravine over here, and it can be dicey when that happens. So this is a good demonstration of the whole point of doing this and using that pipe edge. Hopefully it's been useful. Hopefully it answers some of the questions that were posted in the comments from the last video. By the way, that pothole is still right over there, filled with slush right now. We'll have to come back and revisit that in a couple weeks when I fix it. But that's going to do it for today. As always, thanks for watching.